So again, let's go back and look at what both of them said so that we can compare and contrast. McCain says that all three can be done at one time, and just kind of talks about how he is known for being bipartisan and reaching across aisles. And he talks about alternative fuels. That's a real positive. And he does say "my friends" again, so we had to have our drink. And I think it's really funny that he talks about how $700 billion ends up in the hands of terrorists. Well, the reason for that is, because of the war that he supports. We're sending money over to these countries. We're sending money over to countries that we're at war with to get oil to bring back over here, instead of investing that money into these alternative fuels that he goes on to talk about. So it's kind of like this twisted perception that he's giving that really confuses me for the second time today. Obama puts together, he does think that there is prioritizing that needs to take place, and says that, first of all, we've got to fix the energy crisis. It is a crisis. Those of us who live here in the mountains, it gets real cold, and most homes in Buncombe County run off of oil, and I can't even imagine what it's going to cost to fill our oil tank just one time. Last year it was $700. I suspect it'll be double that. I bet it'll be $1,400 just to fill an oil tank that lasts for half of the winter season. So I absolutely do think that he is right in saying, we've got to deal with priority number one and then move on to the other ones. That's not saying that they can't be done simultaneously, but I think that the bulk of the energy that Congress and the rest of the political party is putting towards something should be energy, and getting us independent from these countries that we are A, at war with, and B, we don't need it anymore. He didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention it. Brazil, for 20 some years now, has been using a combination of cane gas that they create. It's like an ethanol gas that they create out of sugarcane mixed with diesel. So it's a form of biodiesel, but it's like 98% of the cane ethanol mixed with the diesel. And they've been doing it for 20 years or more. So why can't we do that? Why can't we take America and make it a cash crop nation that we used to be, and get our farmers, back in a position where farming and the farming industry is the backbone of America, and that'll provide jobs. That'll provide, people the ability to pay their bills and get out of debt and get our farms back to where they were. Don't get me started on that, because I'm from a farming community, and it's really sad to watch farm owners just lose their livelihood that's been a part of their family for 200 years. So let's move on to the next question. Would you give Congress a date certain to reform Social Security and Medicare within 2 years after you take office? Because in a bipartisan way, everyone agrees that that's a big ticking time bomb that will eat us up, maybe more so than the mortgage crisis. Before I go on to the question, if you're not aware of what they're talking about, Social Security and Medicare is in shambles. It is just falling apart at the seams. The baby boomers that came around after World War II and the 20 years after that time period, this huge influx of Americans that came as a result of health, wealth, and just a boom, are now dying and are having to be on lots of medicines and doctor visits, and it's just astronomically expensive. I'm going to speak from personal experience here and tell you about my father, who spends, I think I've mentioned this before, $1,800 twice a month for medication. I mean, that's astronomical and unbelievable. And at some point, Medicare and Social Security is just going to say enough. Like, we've spent enough money on you, and we're just not going to do that anymore. I've stood in line when that's happened with a woman whose insurance was done for that time period, for that 6-month period. There was no more money. She could not get her money. $600 worth of pills if she couldn't afford them. So it is a huge crisis of biblical proportions, and I don't think that America is nearly as aware of this problem as they are, such as the war and gas and things of that nature. So let's go on to hear what Obama has to say. Well, Tom, we're going to have to take on entitlements, and I think we've got to do it quickly. But I think it's important to understand we're not going to solve Social Security and Medicare unless we understand the rest of our tax policy. And you know, Senator McCain, I think the Straight Talk Express lost a wheel on that one. That's the one time where he does the pathetic fallacy. I want to provide a tax cut for 95% of Americans. 95%. I talked to you guys about this last week. This is basically when he introduces his health care plan, and also this tax cut for people who make less than, and he changed it at the rally. He said $150,000 per year or less, but he's upped it to $200,000 a year or less. Your taxes will go down. So I hope that's true. That would be nice. The more people under that plan, the better. And we can provide a 50% tax credit so that they can buy health insurance for their workers. This is in reference to the small business owners, because there's an awful lot of small business out there in America that want to do right by their workers but just can't even afford it. Now, in contrast, Senator McCain wants to give a $3 billion tax cut, $2 billion of it to the largest corporations, and $100 billion of it going to people like CEOs on Wall Street. He wants to give average Fortune 500 CEOs an additional $700,000 in tax cuts. That's not fair, and it does not work. And it goes on to McCain, and he says, sure, hey, I'll answer that question. Look, it's not that hard to fix Social Security, Tom. And then Tom Burko kind of butts in, and Medicare? And he pauses for a moment. McCain says, tough decision. I want to get to Medicare in a second. Social Security is not that tough. We know what the problems are, my friends, and we know what the fixes are. We've got to sit down together across the table. It's been done before. So Medicare, it's going to be a little tougher. It's going to be a little tougher because we're talking about a very complex and difficult issues. My friends, we have to do with Medicare is comprehensive. We have the smartest people in America come together, and recommendations, and like the base closing commission idea we had, then we should have Congress vote up or down. My brain hurts and I haven't even really drank anything. Okay, so the question was, what are we going to do about Medicare and Social Security? And